I had a moment with a guy in the street that left me wondering for months afterwards. He was wearing clothes in a style that was just slightly off. Couldn't tell you exactly what was wrong with it, beyond every item of clothing looked custom-made somehow. He was excited and a little erratic and asked me when it was. I told him the time, about 1:30 p.m., and he shakes his head and asks me what the date is, so I tell him and he thanks me and then rushes off down the street. Now, I was quite close to our local hospital, and it's possible that he was a psychiatric patient, or he could have been cosplaying for all I know. I think that the psych patient thing is more likely than the cosplaying explanation, though. I never got a hint that he was playing a game or trying to deceive. But I was unable to shake the feeling that he was a time traveler, easily one of the weirdest interactions I have ever had. Moved into a new apartment complex last year, and I am positive one of our neighboring couples are aliens. Both seem to be in their 40s. The husband is nice, but it seems very fake nice, not like snobby or anything, but genuinely trying to put on a show. When I say hi to him, he always slowly raises his hand, stares, and then, after a few moments, gives me a very weird "hi there." He is also constantly working outside of his garage area on like man stuff, but none of his projects or purchases ever see the light of day. It's like it is all a show. The wife is even more bizarre. Unlike her husband, anytime I say hi to her, she stares at me and kind of follows me with her eyes and doesn't say anything. She'll stand in the apartment entrance, and if I pull my car in, she just stares and doesn't move until my car is weirdly close to her. The wife's weirdest trait: I have never fucking seen her wear shoes, but I have never seen her feet. She wears socks all year. I have 1-2 occasions caught her outside in the pouring rain, doing things with only socks on her feet, takes walks with socks, plays with her kids in only socks. Everything this couple does seems like shit straight out of a Men in Black movie. One evening in winter, I didn't leave work till almost 7 p.m. So I was walking home and thought, fuck it, I'll cut through the park to get home quicker, even though it's really poorly lit. A couple of minutes into the park, I could hear a group of people behind me and in front of me, and was thinking, fuck, I'm going to be jumped. Up ahead, there was a lamppost with a CCTV camera on it, so I thought, I'll stop there, and at least I'll get jumped on camera. As I stood beneath this light, this really tall woman jogged over and stopped next to me. I'm 6 feet tall, and she was way taller than me. She asked me, "Is it okay if I walk with you?" And I was like, sure, okay, I guess. She walked with me to the edge of the park, talking about how dodgy the park was at night. As soon as we got to the edge of the park, she told me to have a good night, then jogged back into the park. It was a really weird experience. I felt certain I would have been mugged or something if she wasn't there. I walked through that park every day for about a year and never. There was a young woman about my age at that time, early 20s, sitting alone at a nearly empty coffee shop. She seemed like she was trying not to cry, so I went over and asked if I could sit with her. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing at the same time. She didn't go into detail about what was going on with her, but she felt like there was no hope. I did my best to encourage her, told her not to give up, tried to give her reasons to hold on, thought of ideas that might give her a spark of hope. The coffee shop was closing. I wrote my phone number down and told her that I would love to hang out with her again, and she could call me any time. She looked at me and told me that everything I said to her wasn't for her to hear. It was for me. I hadn't told her that I was, in fact, suicidal. I had originally gone to the coffee shop to think about how to best kill myself. While talking to her, I figured if I could maybe help someone else not feel the way I do, I wouldn't kill myself, at least not yet. She not only saved my life that day, but gave my whole life a new purpose filled with hope. I'm a therapist now. I help people all day. She hugged me, then walked out the door. I ran after her because she forgot the napkin with my number on it. I was no more than 2 seconds behind her. I got outside. and there was no one there. I used to work at a service deli, and this guy walked in one day looking around at everything. He asked me a few questions about how we get our meat, how it gets shaped that way, what kind of currency is accepted, and how the interaction of a purchase is made. Then he just kind of smiled and said, "So sorry if I come off as strange. I'm from the future, so this is all overwhelming to me." Then he spent time at the whole meats department a little distance away from the deli counter, and asked my coworker there similar questions. He also asked him if people purchasing meat of creatures is a significant part of our infrastructure. Me and my coworkers talked about it all day. Realistically, he could have just been a goofy guy, maybe on drugs, or maybe have mental illness related to perception of reality. He seemed like a regular guy. He was wearing office attire that looked expensive, like maybe silk, and spoke clear, fluent English. Never encountered or had a conversation with anyone like that before. I used to be a tailor in a suit shop in Edinburgh, and this very odd-looking gentleman came in. Short, big, broad smile always plastered on his face, and weird little black round glasses that looked like they were Victorian or something. Anyway, he was dressed in an old worn tweed suit and wanted a new one for an event he was going to. He said it was his old fraternity or gentleman's club and gave a name. I wish I could remember it. It was over 10 years ago, but I feel like I forgot the name right away. I measured him up and gave him various suits to try on, selecting a whole outfit over the course of about 2 hours. The whole time he was asking me a bunch of very strange questions and claimed he could see into a person. And this wasn't my calling, but I was an artist. He could tell by my eyes. He kept writing things down in this weird little journal he had. There was something just incredibly unsettling about it all. Eventually, once I had his outfit ready, he passed me a card and said that I should come along to his meetup. He could introduce me to his colleges and that they would have many business ventures for me. He laughed and said that the address was very hard to find, but even harder to leave. He then paid and left me a huge tip before leaving. When I was tidying up, I found one of his notebooks in the changing room. I snuck a look, and it was full of writing, but it was in some other language, and really, really scribbly. There were diagrams for buildings and lots of drawings of crows. He never came back to get the book, and I never went to the address till much later, and couldn't find it. I gave the book to a friend who thought he could decipher it, but nothing ever came of that. Was in my 20s traveling through Italy. I was on a boat trip around Capri when an old guy started chatting to me. Whatever the question was, I made some remark about backpacking and wanting to make my money stretch the length my travels, and he responded that he would swap my age for all his money. Felt like the world had stopped, holding its breath while I thought about my answer. It truly felt ominous and foreboding until I said no. I still remember that feeling 30 years later. It was a few years ago. I was working at Best Buy, and a guy came in with an outfit so inconspicuous it was conspicuous. Maroon jacket, sunglasses, baseball cap. Kind worried he might be a robber. He bought like 200 Tale batteries. We had to ask people if they were a Best Buy rewards number and look it up with their email. I asked the guy if he's a member, and he gets really nervous looking. He kinda acts confused, then said yes. I asked for his email and he froze up for a second, then said something to the effect of http://www.email.com and asked if it sounded like an email. Seeing he wasn't getting it, I just brushed it off and hurried him out. Always just had a weird feeling. I am very skeptic of conspiracy theories, but I want to know what this guy's story was. A few years ago, I was part of an independent media team covering a major event. Not quite Super Bowl or presidential inauguration caliber, but maybe a tier below that. We were covering the street scene, and the producer's goal was to get as many off-the-cuff interviews with famous people as possible. We'd chase mere rumors of even Z-list celebrities all day long. So, one day we were walking down the bar strip of the city where the event took place, and this dude and his posse rounded the corner in front of us and started walking our way. The guy was tall, good-looking enough, well-dressed, and looked like he was having a good time. He was also a total fucking dark cloud shadow. He was wrong. That's the only way I know how to put it. Like we were only seeing a man because our minds were frantically trying to spare us the sight of what was actually there. It was a hot day, but I swear the temp dropped about 15 degrees as soon as we saw him, and all of us, me, producer, cameraman, and sound guy, got walloped by this massive wave of GTFO and away from that man right now, all at once. We turned in unison without saying a word and just booked it. I have never in my life caught a vibe that bad off a living person before or since, and we all felt it like getting kicked in the teeth. It wasn't until we were several blocks away that the sound guy asked, "Hey, wasn't that X?" It hadn't occurred to us, but the man was actually a celebrity and a pretty well-known one at the time. He had a nasty reputation, but so did a lot of the people we talked to. Nothing like what could have accounted for that wave of pure, Arctic evil that swamped all of us and made us run, especially since none of us recognized him at first. "Should we go back and try to talk to him?" someone said to the producer, who'd been running us ragged over much smaller fish all day long. "The hell we will," the producer said. "Not on your life. I need a drink." Later on, I described all this to a friend who has a background in candomblé, and she said, "That guy was being ridden by something pretty damn bad, for sure. Apparently that's what people who are possessed by bad shit look and feel like, and I actually kind of believe it." I was going through a really hard time at the time, and I was walking back home after getting something to eat alone at a local food court. I was standing at the traffic lights, and I saw this guy kind of off to my right and got a weird feeling, like he had an aura or something. Totally normal-looking man, by the way. Anyway, a few minutes later, he comes up to me as I'm walking and says, "You have one of the most kind energies I've been able to see." And I'm like, oh God, is he trying to pick me up? But WTF, please leave me alone. But then he continues and accurately, like insanely accurately, tells me what's been going on in my life, as in, he knows that XYZ thing is happening, but in a broad sense, like, "I think recently you probably lost a family member close to you that you love. You had a falling out, but you need this to push forward, etc." When I clearly looked freaked out, he just smiled and said, "Yeah, I have a gift. People don't believe me, but it's a thing," and just wandered off. The pink lady. I call her that because she always wore bright pink and her skin was very pink. I used to drive to a park that was near me, run around it for about an hour, and then drive home. One year, on the hottest day of the year, I saw this woman who was somewhat overweight, and I'd never seen her before. I remember thinking that a 98-degree day was a terrible day to start going for walks or jogs or whatever. I saw her from a bit of a distance, but I could see that her mouth was wide open. Her walk was a very fast-paced shuffle, like a person running with their pants around their ankles. I saw her a few more times over the coming weeks, always in pink, always with her mouth open, always shuffling, and always from a distance, because the park path had many splits and turns and such. I had mentioned her to friends of mine who thought maybe she was power walking, but after watching videos of that, I don't think that was it. Anyway, one day I was running the opposite direction from her and our paths were going to cross. As I got closer to her, I said good afternoon and waved. As I was saying this, I noticed that her eyes were very dark brown and it was very hard to distinguish the iris from the pupil. She stopped dead in her tracks, stared into my eyes, and smiled at me. And by that, I mean her mouth very jerkily, like something out of a horror movie, went from an O to be a frown, to completely straight, to a smile, and then back again. It was creepy as fuck. As I was leaving the park that day, I saw her sitting on a bench and staring at me as I drove away. Never saw her again. I don't believe in auras in any traditional sense, but every so often I'll see a certain glow or color about a person. I see it as part of the brain's wonderful plastic ability to interpret information, as opposed to a physical reality. But one day I was waiting tables at a restaurant, and a man with, I can only describe as a dark cloud shadow walked in. He almost looked like an animated villain. It stuck out to me so much. There was a slight misunderstanding at the beginning of our interaction, and he was going to try to get me fired. I used every ounce of my customer service strength and ability to turn him around, to the point where he liked me. He then proceeded to order a steak extra well done. The man terrified me. His eyes were beady and empty. His smile was crooked. He saw a chance to hurt me, and he took it. But before all else, I saw that shadow hang over him. I later heard rumors from several people that he was involved in sex trafficking on one side or the other, and boy, do I believe it. I was the only one working a register, as it was later in the night. I had a line full of people, and one supervisor close by doing her thing. I looked up and saw this guy about 2 or 3 people behind my current customer, and he gave me an instant feeling of unease. I saw this black fog-type aura around him. I have never seen auras of any types prior to this or after. I kept watch on him out of the corner of my eye and could feel him just watching me. When I looked up again to take care of customer Nakain too, it was weird guy instead. Even stranger was, no one else was in line anymore, and I could no longer find my supervisor. The store was quiet. All I remember about this guy is he had longish brown hair, average height and looks, and the strangest blue eyes I've ever seen. I looked at him to ask what I could do for him, and before the words even completely left my mouth, he stated he needed a specific brand of cigarettes. The whole time, he had this knowing grin in his face. When I turned away from him to get his cigarettes, everything went black. I couldn't see anything for what seemed like several minutes, but I'm sure it was only a few seconds at best. All I could think was, oh God, this man is in my head and completely fucked my mind. When I finally turned back to him, he just laughed this weird laugh like he knew what I was thinking. He looked at me again and just walked away. As soon as he was gone, everything went back to normal. My supervisor was back. A line full of customers again, all of it. I felt off for several days after this encounter and had nightmares about that guy's eyes following me and telling me he was always watching. Was coming back on the plane from a very important job interview, and I thought I blew it. I was spacing out during the entire flight, and when the plane landed and I finally got up to grab my bags, an older woman 3 aisles down from me looked straight at me and said, "Don't worry, it'll be okay. You'll get it." I reflexively thanked her and ignored what she said, but a few hours later I got a call that I got the job. Only then did I remember what she said. I still don't know why she said that and how she knew what my problem was. He was a customer I was helping out. Honestly, there was nothing that really stood out with him. He was handsome, but in a normal way. He dressed normal, talked normal, was blandly friendly, as you are with strangers, just a normal upper-middle-class type guy. The only thing that really stood out was his blue eyes. Not in a goofy, supernatural type way. He just had very, very blue eyes. But for some reason, he made every hair on my neck stand on end. Alarm bells were going off in my head like crazy. All I wanted to do was hide. I have never felt this way before or since. Even when I was followed home by someone, I have never felt such gut-deep "you are in danger" as I did with this guy. After ringing him through, he reached out to shake my hand. This is not common at all here, but out of politeness, I took it and shook. And I instantly got so nauseous I almost gagged. The moment I got nauseous, he just held my hand and smiled. And something in that smile made me absolutely sure he knew what I was feeling, and he enjoyed it. I'm not religious in any way, but I remember thinking in that moment, Oh, fuck. Is this the devil? After he left, I was still so sick feeling. I had to go to the back and sit down. I'm not sure if he was a serial killer or what, but to this day, I have never experienced something even close to that encounter. I absolutely felt bone-deep certainty that I was in some sort of danger. I felt every bit the prey. It's a hard story to explain because it's all based on feelings, so I haven't told that many people about it. But to this day, it is absolutely one of the scariest and weirdest things I have experienced.